there.
Okay.
And now how do I, let's see, I'm not super familiar. So how do I share? Do I just share a screen?
Under your picture, there's a
Yeah.
more react share.
But I'm wondering, content only, maintenance. Let me see. Let me go. I was like, I can probably somehow upload the slides, but
Mm.
also, what, Dundee? This one. But yeah, I guess we'll just go here. Start the slideshow. Slideshow. Cool. And then zoom, not that zoom, this zoom, and then that one, and then content only. Cool. So is that happening?
Yeah.
All right. Perfect. But yeah. So like but just want to start by saying that yeah, like I find it so fascinating that like today when you look at fasting, it's all like talking about the physical health, like why it's so
Mhm.
good physically for us, for the body, for longevity, for anti-inflammation, for the joints, for the organs, yada, yada, yada. It's all about the biology. But to me, I find it super fascinating how fasting has been a part of human culture for thousands and thousands of years. And every religion has had fasting as an aspect of it. And I just find that really interesting. And I don't quite know what it means, but I'm just going to go through this and point at how fasting was used in these different societies, different religions, different cultures. And and I just start with the like interesting quotes from more recent times. It's like a famous Swiss physician saying fasting is our greatest remedy, the physician within. And that just points to me like our body has its own natural healing capacities. And if we just let it do its thing without interfering, then it knows exactly what to do and how to do it. And it knows how to take care of itself and it knows what it needs. And it will just go ahead and do that when we step out of the way. And by fasting, we're stepping out of the way and letting our body take care of itself.
Mhm.
Another fun thing is this great older book. I always find like older books are having a bit more truth in wisdom because I find books today they have to cater to people's attention and they have to have more exceptionalizing or like more has to include like a bit more fascination. So I feel
Mm.
like they have less truth in them, oftentimes, not necessarily everything. But I really love finding older books and looking at what they say, and I feel more resonance when I'm reading older books. But in this one, Fasting Cure says like through fasting, I found perfect health, new state of existence, feeling of purity and happiness, and then something unknown to humans. Which even in 1911, people were apparently struggling with, being connected with themselves, being in being, connecting to their own joys, connecting to God, and all these different types of things. Um, and so I just found it really interesting that fasting's been used throughout time for self, like self-cleansing and spiritual cleansing, getting ready for rituals, connecting to God, making one more available to the spiritual. They've been using it for the body, for the mind, for the spirit, and they found that the less food that you have, the more abstinent you are, then the more mindfulness, the more awareness, the more connection that you also have. And so it's been used like for three main purposes in all these different cultures for like atonement for sins and appeasing the gods, connecting with the gods and spirits, and also like protection from different disasters and things. And so we look all the way back at ancient Mesopotamia, like beginning of of society. And it was used in that practice of forgiving of the sins. It's been used like for specific religious events, and it was used during like huge crises, things like natural disasters, famines, plagues, and these different things. It was also a major part in funerals when the king died, and it was a sense of experiencing humility, um, surrendering to the divine, and having like this shared aspect of being in grief together as a community, as a society, and also as a way of helping like mm, give credence to God, to the divine, that the king may pass through um, more easily. And what was interesting, it wasn't necessarily institutionalized. It wasn't like we fast every month, we fast every X. It was just kind of as needed on special occasions. Um, and so that's just something interesting because it starts to become more specific later on. And then we come to Egypt, and it was mostly in the priestly class, but also in the general public. But in the priestly class, for different religious occasions, they would fast often enough, like 7 times, like 7 days at a time. But also, it was written, they've seen that up to 42 days they would actually fast for more more important religious holidays. And they would always fast before entering sacred spaces and before performing like sacred ceremonies. And the fast was there as a way to kind of cleanse their body and cleanse their soul so that they weren't creating impurities when they entered into the sacred spaces. And they also did it as a way of becoming more clear for connection to God. And they felt like they would receive, God's into themselves. And so they would fast so that they would have like be pure so that the God could come in. Because if they were impure, then God won't, whatever God they were trying to connect with wouldn't want to enter their vessel because it wasn't clean enough. So they would fast to become a pure vessel that the gods would then be able to enter. The general public would also, they had a like consistent practice of fasting. They had 10-day weeks at this time and the calendar that they practiced. And so at the beginning of each of these weeks, there would be a fast. And then they would also do it for certain holidays, festivals, and again, they'd also do it for pharaoh funerals.
Was it only one day, the beginning of the week?
The beginning of the week, yeah, it's like as far as I understood it, it was like just a 1 day fast. And all of these fasts
Okay.
as well, which I'll mention, is like they're not all specifically entire abstinence of food, but sometimes just specific foods. Like maybe I was only eating vegetables and no wine, no meat, no grain. Sometimes it included things like comforts and sex and um, but yeah, but in general, there was this concept of abstinence, of restraining of certain foods or all foods. And so for some of these, I don't always know when I'm saying fasting. I don't know for each of these if it's specifically, complete water fasting or dry fasting. I know like some of them are specifically like no meat, no wine, um, no grain, but still eating vegetables or very specific foods. But yeah, so fasting here is not always like everything included. Um, this one I thought was interesting for ancient Persia, that it was like part of their society and that it wasn't like commonly used in these other places as a punishment or as a penance for your sins, but it was more so specifically geared towards purification of the body and soul and seeing fasting as this important way of connecting with God. And specifically, what I read was that it was mentioned this god of Ahura Mazda, who is their god of good and light, and so they used fasting as a way of connecting with this god of harmony. And they saw fasting at like this at the societal level, as a psychological and spiritual practice. So I thought that was really cool because this is the first part that I read where it was like brought into the societal structure at large and taught as a practice in like a more positive light and not as this way of like, oh no, there's a bad thing going to happen, or oh no, there's this thing we have to prepare for. Oh no, I did something bad. Let me fast to cleanse myself. It was like this way of just being in harmony and being healthy and being, um, yeah, just like as a part of existence. And then we come to ancient Greece, and this is really cool. It was like really, again, part of the society, but brought in at a more physical level as well. So not just as a spiritual practice, but it was brought in as noticing, hey, fasting is actually really good medicine to stay healthy. It's good for physical well-being and also like for mental clarity, and then also as like a spiritual elevation aspect. And so we have all these famous philosophers, Pythagoras, Socrates, Plato, Hippocrates, who came from this amazing period of Greece. And it was neat. Pythagoras, you know, before he would teach them more advanced, challenging math topics, he would force them to
Cool.
have long periods of fast. And
Cool.
and
I'm
he
not
he
gonna teach to dumb students.
I can't teach to you until you fasted for 10 days.
Wow.
And yeah, and so but he also believed or noticed for himself that it strengthened the memory and his intelligence. And he had this sense in the spiritual way that it freed the soul from, as is translated, prison of the body. Um, and so it's just I found that really cool. And then Socrates and Plato, like Socrates was known to fast to increase his mental capacities and acuities, contemplation. And then Plato was a student, so Plato also continued that aspect of fasting. And then Hippocrates brought it into the medical world, and he specifically noticed that when you're sick and you eat, you're making your sickness worse. And so
Yeah,
there's a quote that's translated, "To eat when you are sick is to feed your sickness." Um, and you'll
I believe that
notice
strongly.
animals, especially like if you have a dog and the dog doesn't feel well, it won't eat.
Yeah,
And that's just a natural thing. And if you notice when you're sick, you have less hunger. And oftentimes we eat anyway because we think that, oh, we need energy.
it's a
But
habit.
and it's like, nah, we need to let our body take care of itself and rest. And in that resting, it's healing and taking care of whatever illness is there. So Hippocrates was aware of that and brought that into their world. And then we move more eastern into like China, and specifically I read about the Zai fasting during a specific period, and that's more for imperial cleansing. And so in this time of China, it wasn't for the general populace, but more so for the royal class and for the emperor. And the emperor would fast. It was recorded that he would fast for 3 to 7 days before certain religious practices and rituals. And for them, this period of fasting was not necessarily all of food, but it was solitude. So there was the room that they would go to, and they
Dopamine.
would stay there for 3 to 7 days, and they'd be free from music was included, free from sex, and most foods. Um,
Sounds like a dopamine detox.
say what?
It sounds like a dopamine detox.
Oh yeah, the whole dopamine detox. Yeah, exactly. And then he would do this cleansing, because you need to become pure to have ritual integrity, before interfering with the or interacting with the higher powers, to pure himself to be worthy as a representative to his people
Mhm.
when he's presenting himself to the higher powers, in these religious rituals. And then we have it in yoga and in Buddhism, and it's done in different ways in yoga, especially for purification of the body and working with the prana and feeling more like becoming deeper into like mindfulness, into meditation, deeper connection with the body and with the energy bodies, coming into the ascetic practices of removing attachment to the body, removing attachment from desires. Um, and in Buddhism, they already practice intermittent fasting, only eating in the morning and afternoon, and they stop at 12 noon. And usually they start again at 6 in the places I've been, but always afternoon, no more eating afternoon. And so Buddhism has that built in the monkhood. And then on certain holidays, they'll do 24-hour fasts or full day fasts, as part of like the meditation practice, becoming more mindful, becoming more inwards. And that's kind of something that's built into the yogic system, into Hinduism, as well as lots of fasting holidays with the monsoon seasons, with new moons and different times of the year. There's a lot of fasting days in the Hindu tradition. And so it's been a part of that practice for many, many thousands of years. And then we come to the Americas, where we have the ancient Mayans, and also the Aztecs are slightly different, but also similar, where it was this important part of the whole civilization of being a balancing like it's a necessity. Like the aspect of fasting is necessity to balance the universe of gods and humans, to keep a balance between the cosmos, basically. And it was more so used by the priests and the ruling class, and very much by the religious priests when they would prepare for ceremonies and and for connecting with the gods. And then also interestingly, in the Aztec societies where there was more human sacrifice, the person being sacrificed they would have a whole year of kind of fasting, but where they would
Oh,
be
yeah.
abstaining from all sorts of things, but abstaining from sex and abstaining from a whole lot of different pleasures and different things, and abstaining from a lot of different foods. And there'd be a whole year of types of fasting and abstinence before being sacrificed, so that the most pure being could be offered to the gods in this way.
Wow, I didn't know that Mayans were doing human sacrifices.
Yeah, yeah, mines. Yeah, they felt like that was an important part of like giving to the gods. In the Mayan traditions, they would sacrifice, like the person being sacrificed was actually like it was kind of considered a blessing, because in the sacrifice you would go straight to heaven. I don't know all the details in the Mayan teaching, but I think there was like 7 levels of like after death places you could go. And if you were sacrificed, you would be automatically at like the highest realm.
Imagine if something of that is true. Like we don't know. Like there's been so many beliefs
I don't think it's true. But
Like, I don't
yeah,
know.
we'll find out after we die though,
Yeah, that's it. Wow.
yeah. But and then also like the Native Americans, which you can't just like group all the Native Americans together. There's many different tribes and many different like cultures within those different tribes. But the one that seems to be well known is like the
Yeah,
Lakota
the
people,
Sundance.
and we still have like the sweat lodges and the teepee tents, and they did vision quests where they would go in solitude, and they would go out into nature, into the desert, and they would fast for a long period of time, and they'd have a specific intention where there'd be a big kind of moment in life, a big question, a big turning point. You like different stages of life they would do it, like becoming a man, and different stages of life, but then also big decision points in life. They would have this question for their gods, and they would go out into nature and fast. And the fasting would help them become more clear and connect with the guides. Um, and then they
Do you know
would
about
receive
the
their
Sundance?
answers. What's that?
Do you know about the Sundance?
The Sundance. I know like Moondance and Sundance. I know more about the Moondance now, but I don't know the specifics of the Sundance. What do you know?
Sundance is for men, and it's
Yeah.
4 days in the sun. So you dance in the sun without water, without food.
Yeah, it's at 4 days.
4 days with temazcals twice a day,
Exactly. Yes.
dancing right in the blazing sun without water
Yes.
and food.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
sounds
Yeah.
like spiritual. Like it sounds like suicidal to me, but some people
It's
swear by it.
so powerful. I heard about the moon dance
Man.
happened while I was at the farm, And like it didn't
Yeah,
happen at the Mystical Yoga Farm
I
retreat
was
center.
there.
Oh yeah, you were also there. I don't remember. I was there too
Yeah,
long. I don't know who's there at what times.
yeah, it was.
Oh yeah, you
It,
left that to go to the moon dance. I remember now.
uh-huh,
Yes,
exactly.
yes.
It's if I ever seen a witchy event, it's this one, man.
Yeah. It was
Super
so
witchy.
powerful though when I talked to the people who came back. The fasting experience was such an important part of that.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
wow. Yeah, that was so powerful. Everyone who came back like was so elated, had so many powerful processes, so much new understandings and realized like it was insane having like people coming back from that. What did you notice from the moon dance where people fasted for 4 days?
Dude,
Women.
I think the experience of being a space holder, like supporting versus dancing, can be so different. And
Oh
for
yeah.
me, it was really hard, and I did not enjoy it that much.
Oh.
But mostly because of the team I was in. I
Hmm.
did not connect with the men I was working with, um, on a spiritual level, let's say. So yeah, it was just very challenging to be up all night, to serve the tea all night, and to just always be on call, uh, and like sleep deprived, and a lot of energies around. So it was
Yes.
just a lot to manage energetically. Um, but it was interesting, and it was cool to see them dance and see it happening, and
Mm.
it felt very powerful. But there's so much that they do that I did not understand why, and
Uh,
all those I would have liked to know more about it than just I just felt like thrown into something that I did not understand 75% of what was happening and the meaning of it, and so it's hard to connect with it, and it's hard to see it as like meaningful when like why do you tie those players to this, and why do you dance in a circle like that, and
mhm.
why do you yeah, there was so many
Yeah.
whys,
Yeah, yeah.
and no one to really explain it. The organizer was dancing, um, so it and the two guys I was working with were their first time doing a moon dance too. So
Yes.
yeah, it was, but
So
the
you don't
fire
know
between
what
the
you're
team,
supporting. It makes it hard to like yeah, get into it.
yeah, but it's still super hard physically, mentally, emotionally. So like after 2, 3 days, I was like, okay, why am I doing this? Like, what is the
Hmm.
point of doing this? But
Yeah.
and the food was super bad. The food was
Hmm.
horrible, like dangerous level.
Oh
Uh,
no. Yeah, that's really
yeah,
tough.
yeah.
That's
And
tough.
the cooks were not aware of like safety measures for food, so
Yeah, well, it's
yeah,
just the volunteers, so it's just yeah, they're doing their best. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
tough.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's it. That was my experience, but I know it's not everyone.
I heard that it felt very unorganized in the kitchen.
Yeah, yeah, it was
People that,
painful to be around, really. Like, it was
yeah.
crazy. Like,
Yeah.
food staying on the counter all day, you're being reheated 3 times,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah. It
I can't
sounded
do it.
very challenging, but yeah,
Yeah,
I want to support one of these days. I want to try that.
yeah, you should. It's a
Yeah.
cool experience. It's an interesting experience, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love what they're doing. I love the support of the people, like the way that,
Hmm.
just the spiritual practice and the process and supporting the feminine and at the higher concept.
Hmm.
I like this a lot.
The sweat lodges were nice, though. That I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I bet.
Sweat lodge every day. Mm.
All right, but here we'll come to the Western Abrahamic traditions that we're all more familiar with, usually Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And it's like very much in this practice of repentance and reflection, discipline, piety, and then coming into humility, and a little aspect of surrender as well. um, in devotion and that and more like I guess I wouldn't really say connection as much as devotion to God. And like the examples is Yom Kippur in Judaism, where we fast for 24 hours, 25 hours to be specific. And and in that day we do nothing. I grew up in a Jewish household and practiced Yom Kippur. So we do nothing and you're supposed to be like no work, and work in this way is like anything. So like you're not supposed to watch TV or listen to songs or um um turn on lights, turn on stove, like that counts as work. You're supposed to fast and be in contemplation of the past year and what your sins were. And I'm fasting in a way of like repentance and of asking for forgiveness. And we say Kal Tsum. Oh no. And some cow. Actually, it's the other way. Some cow. Some cow. But because
Somehow.
it sounds Asian, so that's how I remember it.
Yeah, it does.
But it's supposed to be some cow, but which translates into easy fasting. And so we say, before we start, like, oh, easy fasting to you, easy. Some cow, some cow, some
Mm,
cow. And
yeah.
but yeah, and then Jesus is known for his 40-day fast, which is the Lent that is practiced before Easter, of giving up something that you typically enjoy, and you abstain from that. You fast from that for 40 days. And he did the 40-day fast to endure temptation, and enduring that temptation, proving his devotion to God. And in proving his devotion to God, the angels came and I don't know the full story, but then the angels came and he was be brought to God, and whatever that means. I don't know the Bible that well. But that was the whole idea: enduring temptation and proving devotion. And then in proving your devotion, you become closer and more connected to God and receive his blessings. And then we have Ramadan as the Islamic traditions, like 29 or 30 days of fasting during the day from dawn to dusk. And again, that practice of discipline and um, and repenting and and cleansing. It's kind of bringing all of that together. And so there's these common themes that come through where there is the acknowledgement that it's good for the body. There's an acknowledgement that you know, it quiets the mind, it brings clarity to the mind. It's this shared understanding that there's a connection to the spiritual, connection to God, in the process of fasting. There's this idea of kind of more specifically in yoga and Buddhism, this idea of breaking from attachment, but there's also this idea of like inherently when we detach from things through fasting, we are then becoming more connected. And there's common process of receiving insights when we're in a fasted when we're in the process of fasting. Um, and just re-mentioning that this isn't always like the fasting in these cultures wasn't always 100% fasting. It was maybe sometimes specific things. Um, and and sometimes they also included not just food abstinence, but also certain pleasures and abstaining from sexual activity. And so let's fast.
That's fast.
Let's fast. Yeah, I really love how it's literally in every culture throughout
Mhm.
history. It's just like that just to me shows the relevancy, the importance
Yeah.
of fasting in our lives, whether like it is for a spiritual purpose or whether it's for our physical benefit. But just the fact that it's literally been there for thousands of years, and throughout all of that time, all the different civilizations, they all had an aspect of fasting in it. And so that
Mhm.
just clearly shows like we we need to be fasting for our greatest health, for both physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. Uh, And so yeah, so
Everyone
thanks
would
for
benefit
listening.
for it. Ah, thank you. Thank you. That interesting. Yeah, I didn't. It's interesting how different culture use it